Hello, 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 and welcome back to
A Little Birdie Told You.
I'm your host, Kristen Knight.
And I'm your host, Kelly Knight.
And today the topic of discussion is going to be loneliness. We're going to talk about embracing independence and embracing being alone.
Okay, so here's our quote for today. There are two kinds of loneliness. One you feel you are all alone. The other you feel in a crowded room, by Atticus.
Now, how have you felt alone in your life? Like, when's the first time in your life that you felt like I'm lonely?
I started feeling alone when I feel like it wasn't when we started online school, but it was definitely around that time because I didn't have any friends. I didn't really have anybody to talk to. Obviously, I had Kristen, but me and her, we were different ages. We were not having like the same things that we both wanted to do. So it was kind of like I was like more alone, but like Kristen, like you had more friends than me at the time. Like I didn't really have
Before prior, we did go back to school. We weren't in school.
Yeah.
And then we started online. And then that's kind of when this started.
Yeah, but in general, when we started online school, I wasn't in the greatest mindset because, I was younger, but like still, even being young, you could be like really young, like even 8 years old, and you could still feel alone.
You were 9 when we
Yeah,
started
I was
online.
9.
But when did you actually start feeling lonely? At 9 or like down the road?
I feel like when I was 9, when we first started, I was okay with it because I was at such a young age that I feel like in general, like I just like I still had people to talk to, but like as you gotten older, and I feel like it was around probably the time that I was like, I think I was 13 during this time, and that was the time that was like I remember for like a good like solid year, I was like a little bit like depressed, and I felt like I was like dang, like I felt like obviously like my parents and stuff love me and stuff, but when you have that mindset where you feel alone and stuff, you just feel like nobody really cares about you, and that I felt like I was kind of like rejected and stuff, and that like nobody wanted to be my friend, or that nobody really cared about me and everything, and I felt like I just didn't even really want to like deal with it anymore. And that was something that was like really hard because myself, like when I was in the moment, I always looked back and I was like, dang, myself when I was younger, I was very giggly and smiley and stuff, and like I was like I miss that, and like I was very confident and stuff, and I was like, dang, that's not even me. Like I was like insecure in myself and everything, like everything just always brought me down. And it was just like it was like a lot.
So you were dwelling in the past, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you like, did you continue to feel lonely? Like, what about when you were in social settings?
In general, when I was in social settings, to be honest, I always felt like almost like you're a bubble and you feel like nobody, like people actually like are trying to talk to you, but you feel like nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's a lot, especially if you're like in a group of people and like everybody just kind of leaves you out on things. That was really hard, especially during that time, because it just made things worse. It's just like when people leave you out of things, like people don't actually realize how much that can affect you.
And for me, my experience was different because Kelly's an extrovert. She prefers to be around people. You have a preference for being around people,
Yeah,
right?
because I'm like,
You're
I'm very
outgoing.
extroverted. I'm like outgoing and I like being around people. Like I like socializing.
So being lonely was probably a struggle far more intense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now so for me, let's talk about me. So my experience of being alone. See, I'm an introvert. I actually admire being alone. Like I love it and I appreciate it. So, but it was different and it took a lot to actually get to that place. So I'm going to kind of tell you when I first felt lonely. The first time I felt lonely, I think there was a couple experiences that I really felt alone, but I was always an introvert. So I kind of like live in my head and I live like in my mind, and I have all this internal stuff going on most of the time. Like I'd rather be by myself than be with people. And society tells us that's not accurate. That they tell us like, oh, when you're a kid, you have to be with your friends. Like when you're a kid and a teenager, be with friends, socialize. Like that's normal. So when I didn't socialize, and it was just a natural trait. And I think the way we grew up, like I did go to school. When we were younger, we did go to school, public school. So and I was always that kid, like those kids that you see alone, and you're like, oh, there's that kid. Yeah, I happened to be that kid, right? So I was always kind of alone. If I had friends, I had like a few, and it was like I didn't look at it like a bad thing. Like I appreciated it. It wasn't like I was somebody who's like, oh, I have to immerse myself in social settings. I love socializing. And anyone who's like an introverted person or would consider themselves more of a loner would probably relate to this. So I kind of just like did my own thing. I focused more on me. And as you get older, you have people like criticizing that and judging that. And they're like, why do you want to be alone? They look at you and they're like, why do you want to be alone? Why are you like that? And it makes you like second guess your personality entirely. And I remember I was like, is something wrong with me? And I remember always constantly telling myself, and I developed this mentality like, this isn't okay. It's not okay to be alone. Like, there's something wrong with that. You know what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're an outgoing person, I don't know if you feel that way, but like I would envy the people that were outgoing. Like I remember seeing people when I was like little and I was like, wow, I'm like, that's like they have all these friends, they can talk to all these people, they have like this great personality. And I remember like, I can't relate to that. And I would attempt to, and I would attempt to kind of like conform myself to fit into that setting, and I couldn't. And it made me feel even more like lonely than I already was. And I didn't feel lonely initially. And then it just started developing over time. And then we went into online school. And yeah, I had like a couple friends and everything like
Mm-hmm.
that. So it kind of like eased the feeling of being alone. But I felt more lonely. And I remember online school kind of took a shift because, you know, we went into online school. I love online school, nothing against it
Mm-hmm.
at all, right? But when I was in online school, time went on, and I remember I was like in like probably seventh or eighth grade, right? And you know, we're getting into more socializing and stuff because we were constantly trying to find stuff to like get into so we could still keep connections with people. But people don't realize the hard part about that. And you have to think online school, like now listening to this, online school was kind of accepted. Like people do it, and you're
Yeah,
like, oh
like
yeah,
during the time that we started, everybody thought we were
yeah,
weird.
everyone thought we were weird. And when I tell you this, it makes you feel so alone and so lonely. It hurts. Like it
Mm-hmm.
hurts and it hits hard. And people are like, how does that even hurt? It hurts. Because when you go into social settings, you don't understand everything that's going on. These kids are all in school and they would all like have their own little cliques, and you would like try so hard to like conform to it and be like, I want to be able to do that. And you couldn't. And I remember I was like, I constantly wanted to change myself, and I was trying to work on myself and be like, okay, I'm going to be more extroverted. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I was constantly critiquing myself. And I was like, there's something wrong with me. And I remember my mentality shift. And I was like, I had this negative mindset. Like, I'm not like everybody else. I don't have a bunch of friends. I don't have this. Like, I can't be social and I can't be like outgoing and I can't do this. And I didn't want to be that, to be honest. Like, I wanted to be accepted, but I didn't want to be that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted to be me, Kristen. I wanted to be who I am. And me, I am very quiet. I'm somebody who I appreciate talking to people, but I also appreciate my space. And I am an introvert, and it takes time to get to know me. And people, and I didn't want to be like this person that walked around. And I have no disrespect for anyone who's like that. If you're extroverted, that's you. And I respect you being yourself, but that wasn't me. So it was harder for me to find people I resonated with. And I always felt alone internally. I felt like no one gets me. No one knows where I'm trying to come from. And people be like, well, it's not that hard. Put yourself out there. Go do it. And I'm like, you don't understand. I can't. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they don't get me. Like, I'm trying. And especially with the online school, and I started focusing on things that other kids at my age, I'm going to be honest, were not. Like, they were more worried about things that I was not worried about at the time. And it made it even harder because I was like, I'm going to focus on this and stuff that's going to impact my future in this way. And I think that was just because I spent so much time alone. And you know, Kelli was like, Kelli already was outgoing. You already were pretty social, but she just needed to find like the right people and have enough confidence to do that. And we'll talk about kind of how we overcame that. And I remember I even felt even more alone when the COVID came. So like that even made it worse for me. And I think that made it worse. And then we kind of like then we had some people pass away in our
Mm-hmm.
lives. And I remember that point, like that was like the first time I think I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life because nobody cared. Nobody was there for me. Nobody supported me. I mean, my family did, but like no one like our age was there for us, and no one could really relate to the things that we were going through on certain levels. And I remember I just felt alone. Nobody really cared about where I was. Nobody cared about who like what I was doing. And I remember it was like only me that cared. And of course my parents cared and Kelli cared, but like we said, when you're in that mentality, you think no one cares. You're like, no one cares about me. No one does. And it hurts. It really does. And then I was like, okay, well, this is not going to work for me because socializing is not working. So I remember I built like this metaphorical barricade around myself. And I was like, I'm not letting anyone in. Because I remember when I did, I was getting hurt like really bad by people because people would come into my circle and they would just be like, yeah, we're going to change this about you. And they would leave me out and they would exclude me, like you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about. And that feeling of being excluded, it does trigger you a bit. And being young and that young, I was like, that triggers, that hurts. And I'm sure you can feel that. You probably felt like excluded in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't know why this is happening to me. Completely just like was like, yeah, we're done. We're done with the socializing. We're done with all of that because it's making me feel more lonely. And I think people, if you're alone and you feel lonely, You're like, when you sometimes put yourself in rooms with other people, you can feel even more lonely than you did when you were by yourself. And that's the sad part about it, because you think you're like, oh, I'm seeking people to support me and help me, so I feel less lonely, yet those people make you feel even more lonely than you already were when you were by yourself. Can you relate to that? You understand where I'm coming from? And so I was like, yeah, we're just not going to do that. I don't want to express how I'm feeling because people don't understand. Like I said, built that barricade, kind of took time back, and I was like, I'm done. I'm just going to accept it because it's my reality now. Like I'm lonely. I'm just going to accept it. So what I did, and this is kind of how I overcame it, is I was finding things that made me feel less lonely that I could do on my own. And I know that sounds kind of like crazy, but I was like, let me find some things that I like to do. I'm gonna find some things I like to do. And people were like, well, what do you find to do? For me, I think the first thing that actually felt like made me feel like less alone is I focused on things pertaining to myself. So my health, my wellness, like my well-being, like everything focused on me. So I really started to get into a habit of what I wanted to do in a day because it had my mind focused on me. Didn't have it focused on, oh, I want to feel less lonely. I want other people in my life. I was like, I'm going to focus on me. So I was like, I'm going to find things that I love to do. And I remember like the first time I actually was like, wow, like I feel like less alone was when I started actually getting into like working out. And like that my like fitness journey, basically, I would say the beginning of it. So I was like 14, 15, right during that area. When I was like 14, 15, I started getting into fitness, and I was like, this is what makes me feel less alone, because it was something society accepted being able to be done alone. Like people didn't look at you like crazy if you were in the gym by yourself or you were doing things alone. And it was like I was like, I don't even care what anybody thinks anymore. And that was like the first time I was like, I don't care what you guys think, because I'm not like you. I'm not going to be able to go out there and socialize and be like you and be like him. I can't do that. And I remember people would always, like kids, like teenagers would look at me funny because I was somebody that kind of just did things on my own. I really stopped caring because I was like, what's the point anymore? People criticize me if I'm with people or if I'm alone. And I know I'm talking too much.
No.
And so I was like, whatever. So I was like, then I got into working out, and then the COVID came, so that kind of paused that. And I had to start doing like at home stuff, but I was like, I still love this. I'm like, this is just what I like to do. And I remember other things that got me, like I was just trying to figure out things that I like doing. I developed a habit of like a new morning habit. Like my day was planned. Like I'm a perfectionist, focused entirely on things that made me happy and made me feel less alone. I don't know exactly everything you did that made you feel less alone.
In general, I think it started like I remember during the COVID, like I was trying to put myself out there. So I started going to the gym with Kristen. And I think
Yeah, I
this was
remember
after
this.
COVID. Was this after COVID?
This was before. And then like literally I remember the month that they were like,
Okay,
oh
okay.
yeah, lockdown.
So
We
like
were in the
right
gym.
before COVID happened, I started putting myself out there because I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I'll make some friends at the gym. But I was too scared to go up to anybody, you know? This little scaredy Kelly, that was Kelly before me. And, I was too scared. So, I just started going to the gym with Kristen. And then it came to the point where then we were staying home, like a lot, because that was during the lockdown and nobody could really go outside. You couldn't really hang out with anybody. And that was fine because I feel like everybody was lonely at that time because nobody could really socialize. So I know a lot of extroverts were probably having a lot of problems there. But, I also didn't mind it. But then it was also like kind of hard, like I said, because I was like, I just wanted to like actually have some friends that could like relate and just like actually be able to like do stuff that I could get my mind off of everything, and actually like just like in general, like not heal from everything, but just in general feel like, okay, like I can get my mind off of this and just have something that actually like makes me feel calm, you know? And so I remember, I think this was like a little bit after COVID had happened. I remember I went somewhere and this was like kind of like a party thing. And I remember this was like the day that I think changed me was because any of like the present places we ever went where there was kids, they always kind of left me out. So then when it came to the future of me actually going to this place that I was going, I was too scared to go up to any kids because I was like, they're going to reject me like every other kid did. And like, I'm not going to be able to talk to anybody. So like in general, I could have just like left and I was like, yeah, this is not going to happen. And I remember, I think I went like ran inside and just started crying because I was like, I'm never going to have friends. I'm like, I'm too scared to actually put myself out there. And I was just like, this is like a lot. This is like too much to deal with. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And I remember, like, I think by the end of that week, I remember I was in the gym and like, I think I remember saying the story of
Yeah,
how
we
I
have
met
said
that
this
kid,
story.
whatever. So then I ended up like getting the basketball or whatever, and I started playing basketball. And I remember at first it was almost like God was giving me some lessons. I had some people like say some really like screwed up, messed up stuff to me, especially because I was a girl. So, me being very alone and, not dealing with the greatest things in life and having people to say that to me was like, it was really messed up because people don't know what's going on in your life.
No,
So
you
never
don't.
treat anybody bad, because I doubt half of the people that know me now would have never guessed that to be me. Because then I just started faking it, that like I was somebody, like I like everybody thought I was like, like everybody's like, dang, this girl's kind of cool, And then finally, it came to the point where like I said, fake it till you make it, because I faked my confidence so much that it almost gave me like a confidence booster to be like, okay, like that's that,
Well, see, I was lonely as in the way I didn't crave like being like in social settings, but I craved being like accepted. Like I didn't want to like be looked at like, oh, there's something wrong with her, and that's the way it made me feel.
But in general, like I said, I had not have like actually like laughed or had my general like smile or just like giggly, like my personality, like the Kelly personality, in a very long time. And I remember like I think it took me like a quite a little while, like even when I had friends, like I didn't really have that giggly personality. Like I did, but it was more like fake, And then finally, like I remember the day that I generally had that personality back, that I was like the general like personality of me was like, I don't care who you are. I'm going to like randomly, I would walk into stores and just say random stuff. And that's like me, in general. Like I'm just very like giggly. I'm funny. I say random stuff. I go up to random people, and that was like, I'm like, dang, I'm like, Kelly's back. Kelly's back in business.
Like you
And
felt
yeah,
content.
and I was like, wow, I'm like, this is great, you know? And even still, I would have those moments of people like leaving me out and stuff. But something I did learn from that is like when I went places or I was playing basketball, a lot of my friends were like, no, let's not invite that person over here. We don't know them. I was like, you know what? I was looking at them like, dang, I'm like, you didn't know me and I came up to you. Like, and like now we're friends, but I'm like, why does that matter for that person? So like now anytime I see somebody alone, I'm always like I'm always like inviting them over to like join in on like what I'm doing, because I'm like, that was once me. Like I know how that feels to be alone. And I'm not saying in general like to go up to random people or whatever, and like because some people like to be alone, like Kristen.
Yes.
But like in general, like sometimes like you can tell when somebody's like not doing okay. You know what I mean?
Well, and I don't think when you're alone, like when you feel lonely, because being alone and being lonely is two different things. And I'm going to talk about that. But being lonely, when you're lonely, sometimes you're looking for other people to like satisfy your needs of feeling lonely. So you're like, I'm going to look for somebody to complete me. And you can't do that. Do not do that. If you're feeling lonely, you need to like dig deep within yourself and reflect on yourself and figure out like something that inspires you and makes you feel less alone. Like I said, like Kelly started getting into basketball. And I think that was the first time you were like, I feel less alone. I feel happy. Like I feel content because I can do this on my own. Like you would go down to the basketball court on your
I
own.
would go to the basketball court, like we're talking three or more times a day. Like it was bad. People thought I lived at the basketball court.
Really?
Yeah, and it was bad. But like in
Aw.
general, especially at night though, like at the end of the day, I remember anytime I woke up, I'm like, even if today's a bad day, like I always kept looking at basketball, and I was like, you know what? Here's a reason
It
to
was
live
like
for
your
today.
outlet.
I'm like, here's a reason to live for today. You're gonna go play basketball. I'm like, even if I'm by myself, I enjoyed being by myself if I played basketball, because I was like, it just felt nice, especially when it was nighttime. Like even though there was stuff in the woods and stuff, that didn't matter. I wasn't scared of a bear.
Because let me tell you, when you feel lonely, you're feeling as like if I was gone right now, nobody would care. Like that's the mindset and the mentality you develop, because you're like, nobody cares. So you have to find something that like allows you to feel like I'm waking up today for this. And that's what we both did. Like I started, like I said, I got really into health. I got into everything health. I mean, everything health. I was like, I just clapped my hands, but like everything. Like I was getting into like, that's kind of what led me to my passions. I was like, I really like health. I really like this. I really like that. And I was like, and it just like was memorizing. And I was like, I don't even feel lonely anymore because I have this. Like this is, and then like going outside, being in nature, like do things that, yeah, you can be around people, but you're also content with being on your own. Because the moment you feel content on your own, it's the most rewarding experience, because then you're able to say, I can walk in a room alone and I don't care what people think. You know what I mean? And I came to that point. Like I used to fear being like, I'm gonna be alone. And that's like kind of what was hard. Like, I don't want to go there. Like me and Kelly would be like, I'm like she'd be like, oh, let's go here. I'm like, I don't want to go. And she's like, why? I'm like, because I'm going in there alone. I think that like happened like not actually that long ago. Like it might have been a year ago. Do you remember that? And I was like, I don't want to go. Like I wouldn't go places because I was like, cause I'm like, I'm gonna be alone. I don't want to be alone. I don't want people to look at me funny. And I was like, I don't like that. And it's like, And then Kelli was like, well, because Kelli's more of like, she goes places because people are like, oh, let's all go together. And she's like, yeah. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to go. And I'm like, yeah. And then over time, like now I'm content. Like I will go because I'm satisfied with being by myself because at the end of the day, I mean, of course there's God, but physically that's just me standing here and I'm by myself and I'm sitting there and I'm the only one that really understands me. I'm the only one that understands things that I've been through. And that makes me feel content being alone because I'm like, at least I have myself and I have my passions that I'm able to pursue that are able to kind of like provide me the motivation, energy of not feeling alone. So now I feel content alone and I'm embracing independence. And
Mm-hmm.
it is scary being alone because it's like you feel like, you're having all these feelings going on and it's scary. And I mean, you can be alone in various things. I mean, you can be alone physically and feel lonely too, even though I said they were two different things. Like you could be moving out for the first time and you feel alone, or you could be going to like somewhere new. If you just moved to a new state and you feel alone and you're like, I'm very lonely. I don't know anybody. Like I know there's a lot of people right now that have moved or they're in different countries right now for different things, or they're moving out and they're like, wow, like I feel alone. I'm scared because this is something new and they're going through all these changes. Just remember, feel grounded in what you have that already is you. Find things within yourself because that's going to help you feel less alone. Don't look for other people or external factors to help you feel less alone because sometimes that makes you feel even more alone and it intensifies the loneliness, as we were saying, because sometimes people can make you feel more alone. So find something within yourself or find something that like just feels amazing, that makes you
Mm-hmm.
wake up and you're like, this is what I get to do today. And I get to do it alone and I'm excited to do it alone. And I'm a very independent person. So I could be saying this and you're like, well, I'm not independent. I mean, I am independent, but I'm not independent. At the same time, you're more extroverted or you just love socializing. And you're at a point in your life where you're like, do you have any advice for people that are like very extroverted and they don't have like that actual capability to go out there and socialize? Like, I don't crave socializing, but she does. So what would you recommend to people that are like, maybe they just moved to a new state or a new country or they're in a new place and they are extroverted and they want to go out and socialize?
No, in general, always have the mindset, don't care what other people think. Their opinion does not matter. And in general, honestly, don't always like, obviously, I'm an extrovert, but I also know not everybody's going to stay in your life, so you can't always depend on people. Especially like that's kind of hard, especially being somebody who likes to be around people. But in general, find something that like can stay with you. Like basketball is never going to leave me.
Something that you can like ground
It's
yourself
something that
in.
you're like, it's something stable that you could always like not run to, but somewhere you can go if you feel like alone or you're just like stressed out, anything like that, that you just feel like, okay, that's like my calm spot. And like at the end of the day, that's what I know I could go to. Or just even music in general sometimes help. That's something that's like a very big thing with me.
Yeah, like find something that you feel like you can resonate with. I
Mm-hmm.
always say this when it comes to a lot of different internal struggles like stress and stuff, because I think that when you find something that you can like focus your mindset on
Mm-hmm.
that takes more of your time and you're like this like completely detours me from even focusing on being alone, that's when you're going to feel happy. Like whatever, I don't know what everyone likes to do, and everyone likes different things. And when you find something, even like just exploring different things or getting out there, like expanding your horizons and like being able to say like, oh, start going on a walk every day. Maybe that'll make you feel less alone because you have something that you need to do. Or like, get a pet if you are able to do, like if you or somebody just moved out and you're alone and you're like, I need something, get a pet. If you are able to get a pet, I love pets. That was gonna get
I'm
me on
more
a,
the animal
yeah,
person
but
over
that was gonna
here.
get me on something else. But find something. I keep repeating this, but just find something. There's got to be something that you can find. That's why I said explore yourself. Don't look for somebody else. Don't do that. Do not do that. Do not put yourself in a situation because you want to be able to be content on your own because
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be positions in your life where you are alone and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. But when you feel lonely, just say, okay, I'm going to start, like, you could start working somewhere. And if you are an extrovert and you're like, I really want to meet people, then just put yourself in environments where you might meet like-minded people that are not going to make you feel less alone. And I think that's kind of what we were doing wrong is we might have been putting when you're young and you're in middle school, let's be real, the kids are really immature. Like I'm 18 now. A lot of the kids are really like they're immature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, kids are still mature now. And I think they don't know, like, oh, she's lonely, she's doing this. They just look at us like she's weird. You know what I'm saying? And then when you're young and you're developing your mentality, you're like, oh, I'm weird. And you're listening to everyone else. And really, when you're older, you're like, I don't need social validation. I'm okay on my own. I'd rather be alone because when people bring all their problems to me, that's the way you start looking at it as
Mm-hmm.
you get older. And you'll realize that. And if you are feeling lonely right now, because I'm going to be talking to people that feel lonely, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. You will get out of this. Do you have any advice for them? You will be fine.
You're
I
gonna be
mean,
fine.
it takes time. Things take time. Find something that you feel good about. Find
Always like
something.
don't worry about the bad things in life. Like honestly, just like focus on the good things that you have in life in the moment. Don't sit there and like worry because it's like honestly just focus on the present. Not worry about the future of what's gonna happen because I know like a lot of people are like that. I kind of used to be like that because I'm an overthinker, but it's like in general, if you're alone, just find something that you can like actually like.
Just embrace
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Embrace the independence. And sometimes when we're put in positions where we have to be alone, it's kind of like I've looked at it as it's God's way of telling you like this is time that you need to take alone. Like this is time that you need to be alone because you need to learn something. And you're going to learn a lot on your own. Do not envy the people that are surrounded by other people because let me tell you, people that are surrounded by other people and they look like they're happy and they have a lot of friends, sometimes they're not. They just put on like a facade that they're really happy. Don't look at other people. Like I said, do not look at other people for validation. Just focus on you and say, okay, well, I'm feeling lonely. Let me find something that makes me feel less alone. Like I know Kelly paints, Kelly plays basketball. I'm into fitness. I'm into like reading and all that good stuff. And and it's different for everybody. And you're gonna find something that makes you feel less alone when you sit there back and you are on your own, okay? And then you'll be more content on your own. You'll be able to embrace the independence and embrace being alone.